My conservative Asian parents did not approve my American fiance and tried to pick the other best match for me. Hello, everyone. I'm Maya, and if you had asked me a few years ago where I saw myself in the future, I never would have imagined the journey I'm about to share with you. It's a tale of love, cultural clashes, and difficult choices that reshaped my entire life. I grew up in a traditional Asian family, rooted deeply in our customs and community expectations. My life was structured around family obligations and societal norms, and I never really questioned it, until I went to the United States for my studies. That's where I met Tyler, who introduced me to a world so different from my own, filled with new ideas, freedom, and unconditional love. Falling in love with Tyler was like finding a part of myself I didn't know was missing. However, our bliss was short-lived when my parents learned about our relationship. Coming from a conservative background, they had a different vision for my future, one that involved a husband from our own community, someone who understood our ways and could uphold our traditions. The situation escalated when they called me back home under the guise of my mother's illness, a manipulation aimed at pulling me away from Tyler and back into the life they had planned for me. Little did I know, this trip would set off a chain of events that would challenge my values, test my love, and ultimately lead me to choose between the two worlds I held dear. This story is not just about the choices I made, it's about what those choices cost me and the reality of living with them. It's about love that crosses borders, but also about the borders within our hearts and homes that can be the hardest to navigate. Upon landing in my home country, the familiar scents and sounds that I had missed filled me with a nostalgic comfort, but also a sense of foreboding about what awaited me. As I walked through the airport, my father's stern face greeted me, his demeanor cold and unyielding. The warmth I had always hoped for in our reunions was absent. Instead, his first words were a stark reminder of why I was summoned. "Your mother has been asking for you," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. It was a statement, not a greeting. The drive home was tense, filled with my father's lectures on family duty and the importance of maintaining our cultural integrity. He spoke of preserving family honor like it was the highest law of the land, a law I was on the verge of breaking with my relationship with Tyler. The joy of being home was overshadowed by the weight of my parents' expectations. Seeing my mother again was a relief, but also a shock. She was not bedridden or severely ill as I had feared, but there was a weariness in her eyes that suggested another kind of pain. "I missed you, my child," she said, embracing me. Her touch, familiar and warm, contrasted sharply with the chill of my father's demeanor. But even her welcome couldn't mask the strategic undertone of my sudden return. It was a maneuver in a game I hadn't agreed to play. Over the next few days, my parents wasted no time in laying out their plans for me. Social gatherings were arranged, and I was paraded in front of eligible bachelors like a prize to be claimed. Each event was a blur of faces, each one blending into the next, with men who spoke of their businesses, their assets, and their family lineage, but never of love or passion. These interactions felt transactional, a stark departure from the deep emotional connection I had with Tyler. One evening, as I sat in my childhood room surrounded by relics of a life I once knew, the reality of my situation sank in. My parents were planning my life as if I were a puppet, not their daughter. The distance between my world in the US and my life here yawned wider than ever. I felt trapped, caught between my desire to not disappoint my family and my need to live a life true to myself. The climax of these orchestrated meetups came one night at a large family dinner, where my father formally introduced me to a young man from a particularly influential family. "He comes from a good lineage, well-educated, and understands the value of tradition," my father boasted, casting me a pointed look that left no room for protest. As the young man discussed his views on marriage, a partnership beneficial for merging family assets and upholding social status, I felt a suffocating pressure closing in. He was exactly what my parents wanted, a perfect match in their eyes, but to me, he represented everything I was running from, a life chosen by lineage and duty, not love. That night, after the guests had left and the house quieted down, I lay in bed, the weight of my gold-embroidered traditional dress pressing down on me like a physical manifestation of my predicament. My thoughts raced back to Tyler, his kind smile, his gentle understanding, and how he loved me for who I was, not the pedigree I came with. The dissonance between my two worlds was unbearable. I knew I couldn't live the lie my parents wanted for me. I needed to make a choice, one that would either align with my family's expectations or break free from them entirely. As dawn broke, the decision was clear in my mind, though I knew it would change everything. I had to go back to Tyler, back to the life where I felt like myself. But first, I had to confront my parents, a confrontation that I knew would be the hardest thing I'd ever have to do. The morning after the dinner, armed with resolve but a heart heavy with dread, I approached my parents during breakfast. The clinking of dishes and the murmur of the morning news created a backdrop to what I knew would be a life-altering conversation. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I need to talk to you about my future. I appreciate your concern and your efforts to see me settled, but I must return to the U.S. My life, my work, and my heart are there." My father's reaction was swift, his eyes narrowing as he set down his cup with a sharp clack. "Is this about that American boy?" he asked, his tone icy. "We thought coming home would help you see sense, Maya. We're only thinking of what's best for you." My mother, ever the peacemaker, reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "Maya, we miss you. We want you close to us, where you belong. We're doing all this for you." The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of my life. My parents laid out their arguments thick with emotional manipulation. My mother feigned worsening health, speaking of her, possibly last years, needing her daughter by her side. My father threatened financial disinheritance, stating that choosing Tyler meant cutting off all ties with my family and my roots. Each word was a calculated strike, but beneath their attempts to sway me, I sensed a deep fear of losing control, of deviating from the community's entrenched norms. I listened, my heart sinking, as they painted a picture of the life I could have if I stayed: security, respect, and acceptance. Yet none of their promises touched upon happiness or love, the very essences that made life worth living. "I need some time to think," I finally said, my voice choked with emotion. I needed space to breathe, to escape the oppressive atmosphere of manipulation. That afternoon, I took a long walk through the neighborhood of my childhood, each step punctuated by a flood of memories and a cascade of doubts. Could I really sever ties with my family for my own happiness? Was love worth such a steep price? In the midst of my turmoil, my phone buzzed with a message from Tyler. "I love you, and I'm here for you, no matter what." His simple words were a balm to my frayed nerves, reminding me of what I stood to lose if I gave in to my parents' demands. The days that followed were a blur of emotional confrontations and silent contemplations. I met with a few friends from my past, seeking advice and solace. They each echoed a similar sentiment. The decision was mine to make, and I should choose the path that led to my happiness. As the deadline to give my parents an answer loomed, I knew what I had to do. It was not just a choice between two men, but between two lives: my parents' vision of an ideal daughter, or my own vision of a fulfilled, autonomous individual. On the final evening before my planned departure, I sat down with my parents once more. "I have made my decision," I began, my voice firmer than I felt. "I respect and love you both deeply, but I cannot live the life you have planned for me. I choose to return to Tyler, to the life we are building together." The disappointment and anger in their eyes were painful to witness, but alongside them, I felt a profound sense of liberation. My path would not be easy, but it would be mine to tread. As I packed my bags that night, I prepared not just for a journey across the globe, but for a journey into a new chapter of my life, one filled with unknowns, but also possibilities of genuine happiness and love. The flight back to the U.S. was long and gave me ample time to contemplate the gravity of the step I had just taken. I had chosen my own happiness over familial duty, a decision that felt both liberating and terrifying. As the plane touched down on American soil, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety: relief at being back in a place that represented my personal choice and freedom, and anxiety about the uncertain future ahead. Tyler was waiting for me at the airport, his presence instantly calming the storm of emotions inside me. His smile was a beacon in the chaos of my turbulent thoughts. We embraced, and in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. "Let's go home," he whispered, and the word home had never sounded so sweet. The days that followed were a blend of joy and adjustment. Tyler and I spent hours talking about everything that had transpired during my time away. He listened intently, offering support and understanding, reinforcing why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. Together, we began planning our future, discussing everything from potential wedding venues to the values we wanted to instill in our future children. However, the peace of our reunion was short-lived. About a week after my return, I received an unexpected call from back home. It was from my cousin, a close confidant who had been supportive of my decisions. The news she brought was like a cold splash of reality. My parents were more devastated than I had imagined, and the community's backlash against my decision was both harsh and unforgiving. My parents, grappling with a mix of shame and stubbornness, had decided to formally disown me, cutting off all financial and emotional ties. The news hit me harder than I expected. Despite my resolve, the finality of their decision was a bitter pill to swallow. I grieved for the family connection I had lost, for the part of my life that was now firmly in the past. But amidst the grief, there was also a strange sense of closure. The bridge was burned, and the only way left was forward. As Tyler and I navigated these new realities, the challenge of building our life together without the support of my family became apparent. We faced financial strains, as the funds I had relied on from my parents were no longer available. Additionally, the cultural differences between us, once charming quirks, now required careful negotiation and compromise. One evening, as Tyler and I sat discussing our budget and future plans, the emotional toll of the past few weeks caught up with me. Tears streamed down my face, not just for what I had lost, but also for the immense pressure of what we were trying to build together. Tyler took my hands in his eyes filled with concern. "We'll make it through this, together," he assured me. "Whatever it takes, we're in this together." His words were a comfort, but as we continued to plan our wedding, a celebration meant to be a joyous occasion felt overshadowed by the absence of my family. I struggled with the idea of walking down the aisle without them, knowing that their absence was the price of my freedom and happiness. The emotional complexity of our situation reached a climax one late afternoon as Tyler and I walked through a local park discussing wedding plans. The conversation shifted suddenly when Tyler stopped, looking at me with serious eyes. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing us over your family?" The question hung in the air, heavy and daunting. I took a deep breath, considering all that had transpired. "Sometimes the pain of losing them is overwhelming," I admitted. "But I regret not being true to myself more. I love you, Tyler, and I believe in the life we're building. It's hard, but it's worth it." Tyler pulled me close, and as we embraced, I knew that despite the hardships, our love provided a foundation strong enough to withstand the storms. We were creating a new family, one built on mutual respect, love, and understanding, a family that would hopefully, one day, bridge the gaps left by the past. The months rolled on, and with each passing day, Tyler and I wove tighter the fabric of our shared life. We set a date for our wedding, choosing a small, intimate ceremony that would celebrate the love that had triumphed over so many obstacles. As I addressed the wedding invitations, the absence of my family's names on the list was a poignant reminder of the cost of my choices. Each envelope sealed was a bittersweet acknowledgement of the new reality I lived in. As the wedding planning progressed, the financial pressures mounted. Tyler and I took on extra work to cover the costs, our evenings and weekends consumed by efforts to secure our future. The stress was relentless, but our commitment to each other never wavered. We found joy in the small moments, a shared laugh over a burnt dinner, quiet evenings spent planning our dream home, the comforting silence that filled the room as we worked side by side. However, just as we began to find a rhythm in the chaos, an unexpected challenge arose. Tyler's job, which had provided much of our financial stability, was suddenly in jeopardy due to company downsizing. The news came as a harsh blow, the uncertainty of our financial future casting a long shadow over our upcoming wedding. We sat together one chilly evening, the gravity of our situation settling around us like a dense fog. "We might have to postpone the wedding," Tyler said, his voice strained with frustration. "I don't want to, but I don't see how we can afford it right now." The possibility of delaying our wedding, the symbol of our new beginning, was heart-wrenching. I felt a familiar surge of helplessness, reminiscent of the powerlessness I'd felt under my parents' control. But this time, I wasn't alone. "Let's think about it," I suggested, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maybe there's a way we can still make it work." Determined not to let this new setback derail us, we pored over our budgets, made cuts where we could, and brainstormed ways to generate additional income. Our evenings became filled with crafting handmade wedding decorations and searching for freelance opportunities. Every penny saved, every extra hour worked, was a step towards reclaiming our dream. Amidst these challenges, our relationship was tested in ways neither of us had anticipated. The stress occasionally sparked arguments over money, priorities, even trivial misunderstandings that neither of us would have noticed if not for the underlying tension. Yet, each disagreement was followed by reconciliation, a reaffirmation of our commitment to face these trials together. As our planned wedding day approached, another wave of emotions overwhelmed me. The joy of our imminent union was tinged with the sadness of doing so without my family. My heart ached for their blessing, for their presence to share in the happiness that had blossomed from so much turmoil. Then, one late afternoon, as I was arranging the final details for our ceremony, a delivery arrived, a small, unassuming package addressed to me. Inside was a simple card and a beautiful hand-embroidered handkerchief. The card bore no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. "For your wedding day," the note read, "with love." Tears filled my eyes as I clutched the handkerchief, a symbol of reconciliation, or perhaps forgiveness. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of many unspoken words. My family might not be there in person, but this token showed that part of them still cared, still hoped for my happiness. With renewed spirit and the subtle blessing from my mother, Tyler and I approached our wedding day, not just as a celebration of love, but as a testament to resilience, the kind that builds bridges from broken things and finds light in the darkest of places. Our journey hadn't been easy, but it was ours, and every trial had only made the promise of our tomorrow together that much more precious. As our wedding day dawned, bathed in the soft light of an autumn morning, the simplicity of the ceremony belied the depth of our journey together. The small chapel was filled with close friends and a few distant relatives, each face a testament to the community we had built in the face of adversity. Holding the handkerchief my mother had sent, I walked down the aisle, each step laden with mixed emotions. The delicate embroidery was a poignant reminder of love intertwined with regret, a silent thread connecting me to the family I had lost. As Tyler and I exchanged vows, every word carried the weight of our promises to face the future together, whatever it might hold. The reception was modest, but filled with genuine laughter and conversation. Yet, beneath the festive surface, the reality of our challenges lingered. We were acutely aware of the financial strains and professional instability that awaited us. Our wedding was a brief sanctuary from these trials, a cherished memory we would hold close in the times to come. In the ensuing weeks, as we navigated the intricacies of married life, our bliss was tempered by the practicalities of our situation. Tyler's job search was frustratingly fruitless, and we tightened our belts further, postponing plans for a honeymoon and a new home. One evening, as we sat reviewing our financials, the weight of our challenges felt overwhelming. "Sometimes I feel like it's us against the world," Tyler said half-heartedly. I took his hand, offering a small smile. "Maybe it is, but at least it's us together," I responded. It was a small comfort, but it fortified us against the sense of isolation that our struggles sometimes imposed. Despite these hardships, we found joy in small victories. I secured a few freelance projects, and Tyler's evening guitar lessons brought in additional income. We celebrated each success, no matter how minor, as a triumph against the odds. As our first anniversary approached, reflecting on the year brought both pride and pain. The dreams we had nurtured felt distant now, reshaped by reality, yet our commitment to each other had only deepened. One crisp evening, as we watched the sunset from our balcony, Tyler broached a delicate subject. "Do you ever think about moving back, closer to your family?" he asked thoughtfully. I sighed, the question stirring a tumult of emotions. "Sometimes. But then I remember why we made our choices. Going back might mean facing those old wounds anew." Tyler nodded in understanding. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We've built something important here too." Just as we settled into the comfort of our shared silence, my phone rang, slicing through the quiet. It was a call from back home. My cousin's voice was choked with emotion as she delivered the news that shattered the tentative peace I had found. My mother had passed away, and the funeral had already taken place without my knowledge. As I clutched the phone, the news of my mother's death echoing hollowly in my ears, a wave of profound sadness washed over me. The finality of her passing, compounded by the stark reality that I had not been informed or invited to her funeral, left me feeling utterly abandoned. The connection to my family, already tenuous, now felt irreparably severed. The room around me seemed to fade into a blur as I processed the loss. I wouldn't just miss my mother. I would miss the chance to reconcile, to explain, to make peace. The realization that I would never see her again, never share my life with her or introduce her to future grandchildren, hit me with crushing force. It was a grief that felt like a physical ache, a hollowness in my chest that no words could fill. Tyler's arms were around me, his presence a silent pillar of strength, but the gulf of my isolation from my family felt vast and unbridgeable. His comfort was a balm, yet it couldn't quite reach the depths of cultural and familial disconnection that now defined my reality. The loss of my mother was not just a personal tragedy, it symbolized the complete disintegration of my familial ties. The fact that my family had chosen to exclude me from the mourning process was a clear message of my ostracization. It underscored a bitter truth. In their eyes, I had forsaken them first, choosing a life and love they could not accept. Now, they had forsaken me, even in grief. In the days that followed, as I tried to come to terms with the reality of my mother's death, I found myself grappling with a complex tapestry of emotions. There was anger at being kept in the dark, profound sadness for the loss of my mother, and a deep, lingering guilt for the choices I had made. Choices that had led to this chasm between me and my family. I mourned in silence, the rituals of grief denied to me. There was no closure, no communal mourning, no sharing of memories with relatives. My grief was solitary, a path I walked with Tyler at my side, but alone in my cultural and familial isolation. The emotional turmoil rekindled questions about my identity and belonging. Had I lost too much in my pursuit of personal happiness and love? The joy of my life with Tyler was real, but so was the pain of disconnection from my roots. I found myself living between two worlds, belonging fully to neither, navigating my grief without the cultural and familial support that had once defined me. As time passed, the sharp edges of my grief dulled into a more persistent ache, a constant reminder of what I had lost and what I had gained. Tyler and I continued to build our life together, each day a testament to our resilience and commitment. Yet, the shadow of my estrangement from my family lingered, a poignant backdrop to our shared happiness. In facing the future, I held on to the hope that perhaps, one day, there might be some form of reconciliation or understanding from my family. But for now, I focused on the life I had chosen, a life with Tyler, rich in love, but woven with the threads of loss and the bittersweet knowledge of the sacrifices that true freedom often demands.